Hey guys, it's the Docs with Pure Chiropractic. We are back for the 10th episode of the Pure Perspective podcast. And so we are talking about autoimmune conditions today and how the nervous system plays a role in that. And so I think it's certainly something that has become significantly more prevalent in our office. And we're seeing a lot more adults and children with concerns. Tying to autoimmune conditions. So we're happy to dive into it, talk about it, get a little bit more knowledge on it out to the public so that everyone knows. But on top of that, I think that we're just seeing it become more prevalent in the world. Like I feel like we didn't talk about autoimmune conditions as much, 20, 30 years ago, which I was 8 years old. So it's really not like I would have known if we were talking about it, but I don't think the topic was as known by people back then that it is now. And so I think whether it's a mix of just having better diagnostic tools to find out if that patient or if that person has an autoimmune condition, or if it's just that we've got way more inflammatory processes in our daily life that is creating some dysfunction. Either way, we're looking to find out what those causes are and help those patients and hopefully future patients be able to overcome those challenges.
I think it's such a catch-all term. People hear autoimmune disorders, conditions, whatever, but it's not really broken down. They don't know. I don't think the general public knows what falls under that umbrella. We're certainly talking about it today because I don't think the general public knows what our role in helping naturally with these kids and these families is. So, not to go through like an entire list, but just run down like a handful of things that fall under this umbrella that are regular occurrences for us in the practice. What do you guys see?
We've got like juvenile arthritis, we've got lupus, MS, RA, that's rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. Celiac disease is like, I feel like the big ticket one that we've been hearing about more recently. I mean,
I mean, and you're
there's
as you're
probably
naming them,
so many
I'm
more.
thinking of the people, right? Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can, like we have at least one or two people in every one of those
yeah.
categories that we're working with them to try and see some improvement. So, if you've listened to any of the episodes before, you know that we lean heavily into the exams and into our scans. What information, Dr. Anna, do we get from the scans that allow us to be able to help in a space where people don't really think of us as a tool or a resource to get help?
Yeah, our scans are definitely really significant in those cases. Um, Specifically with like rolling thermography and SEMG, we do have or we will see a lot of inflammation and overactivity in the cervical region, especially the upper part of that. And then looking at their heart rate variabilities, they're just so low and like their body can't have the resilience to handle any of that autoimmune because their body is just fighting itself pretty much. And so that's where the scans really give us more direction and where we can help them and what they need to help their brain talk to their body a little bit better and not, fight against it.
Yeah, there's such an inflammation component that we see very clearly on the scans. We see a big crossover pattern with these kids, especially where their nervous system is just driving so hard trying to make sense of it, and the direction is not there. So it's almost like it's just running in a circle. It's just something repeating itself over and over again. So when we do those scans and we have all that information, how do we chart a course with those families? What are we trying to accomplish in those scans to see that improve for them?
I think the biggest thing is looking at the vagus nerve's role in that child's body or in that adult's body. And so um we've talked about it before, and it's also like kind of like a trigger word now with like mental health and lifestyle and balance within the body and the nervous system. But the vagus nerve controls the body's entire like homeostasis process. It's going to get us into that rest and recover response more effectively. And that's our whole job. Like it I wanna say it's more complicated, and it can be, but it's pretty easy. We're just trying to get the vagus nerve to turn on and effectively work, especially in these autoimmune cases, and so when we have the vagus nerve working effectively, the body's gonna get in that rest and recover response. The vagus nerve helps to control heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, our, immune system, like our organs that help to produce those, antibodies that help to fight things off and just our body's ability to function effectively. And when we are stuck in fight or flight, that vagus nerve gets shut down. And so we talk a lot about like the gas pedal and the brake pedal. And our body's gas pedal is that fight or flight response. It's that go, go, go. Our body needs to move. If we're perceiving our environment in a way that feels like it's threatening, then we're going to try to make sure we get out of that threatening situation. And even if we don't know that we're consciously doing that, subconsciously, that's what our brain is telling us. Now, when we have dysfunction, like when we see the scans that Dr. Anna was talking about, if we have dysfunction in that upper cervical region, if we have dysfunction on the HRV scan, that heart rate variability is dropping low, the body can't replenish energy, or it's stuck in fight or flight, like sympathetic dominance, or we have low parasympathetic rest and recover tone, we can't expect it to do the things that it needs to. And so the brake pedal is that rest and recover response. When it's not working effectively for that child or for that individual, we're going to see that their immune system can't turn on well. Their heart rate might be higher. Their sleep might be very, very poor. They might be struggling to sleep, or digestion could be completely halted or turned off, or not as active as it should be, or as efficient as it should be. And so I think the biggest thing is just trying to make sure that we get that vagus nerve turned back on. And that's where certainly the scans tell us kind of the starting line of where that child is at or where that adult is at. But then beyond that, the adjustments themselves are creating positive impacts in how that vagus nerve gets turned back on, and how the interference between the brain and the body gets removed so that the vagus nerve can do its job.
Yeah, because you were hitting around it a little bit when you were talking about sympathetic, but the vagus nerve is a parasympathetic driver, so it is a calming down part of the nervous system. So we see in these cases, we see two different things. You can see either the hyperactivity and overdrive of the sympathetic system that turns off the parasympathetics, or you can also see just an underutilization of the parasympathetics from the get-go. Both of those are going to look similar but different on those scans, and that's kind of where, I don't want to say expertise because that's making us sound too cool, but it's where our expertise comes in to go, well, what is the right stuff to adjust on this kid based on the findings that we have, so that we can get their nervous system pointed in the right direction. Because an adjustment is incredibly powerful, but if you put the wrong adjustment in the wrong place, you're just going to deepen that child's case or that child's circumstances. So we're doing everything we can to avoid that.
Yeah.
So what are common things in this space that parents are told? Because I think from a stress standpoint for both the child and the parents and co-regulation, these autoimmune kids are going through a host of appointments. They are constantly going to things. There's constantly checks and analysis done on them. That, as we've been told by the parents countless times, is incredibly stressful for the family. So, what other stuff might parents that are listening be doing that they might have that aha moment that maybe there's a chiropractic piece here or a nervous system piece that we should look at?
Well, I'll keep
Go for
talking.
it.
I'll keep talking about it. So basically, we see a lot of parents that come in, and it's not just for autoimmune conditions, but in general, we see parents coming in with, they've done OT or PT, they've done diet changes, like especially when it comes to gluten. Gluten. I was combining dairy and gluten. That was terrible. Dairy, gluten, eggs. They're trying to remove things that they think their child can't handle. And while I could stand on a soapbox and talk about the foods in America and how they're pretty inflammatory and kind of garbage for our bodies, it's also sometimes all that kids will eat. And so they're certainly, seeing where children are struggling, especially at a young age, to get good nutrition because they're picky or they don't like certain foods, but then it's also inflammatory foods. So they do a lot of like diet changes, elimination diets. We've also seen like chelation, we've seen supplements, we've seen um, I mean, like a host of things that they've tried. And they come to us and they're like, okay, my child's getting kind of better, or my child's like showing some improvements. The biggest one I feel like more recently has been steroids. Like we've had
Mhm.
parents coming in saying that their medical provider has this prescribed, I almost said subscribed, but we're on YouTube, so it works. But their medical provider has prescribed steroids for their child. And then we see this like slew of reactions and consequences for that kid after the fact. And it's like, okay, well, my kid's got eczema flaring up all over their body, or they've got this other insane rash, or they've got these conditions or concerns that are leading us down this rabbit hole of like something is wrong. We know something is wrong. And while the medical professionals or the functional medicine doctors are trying to do their best to improve the outcome for that child or for that individual, they're not getting to the foundation, to the root cause of it. And so I if you are a patient, you've probably heard me talk about this a lot, but we have a healing hierarchy pyramid that I love to bring up with every mom or dad in the practice. But the idea that like it at the forefront of the I'm trying to pyramid, okay, right? Like we got a triangle. At the base of the pyramid has to be the central and autonomic nervous system. And then everything else stems from that. And so when we look at motor function, when we look at gut and immune function, which is what we're talking about right now, the immune system, when we look at that cognition and language and development and fine motor skills, those higher cognitive qualities, we can't expect that child to grow or develop well in those areas if they don't start with the nervous system. And so when we have those parents that come to us and they're like, we've done supplementation, we've done steroids, we've done chelation, we've done all of these things to try and improve this child's function and how they're healing and adapting every single day. But if the nervous system was never put at the forefront, you're only going to get so far. And
Mhm.
so we've seen countless cases where as soon as they start putting chiropractic care at like the first priority, and that sounds like, we're the coolest, we're better. I know that's not what we're saying, but if we start with that first, everything else that child does later, whether it's therapies, whether it's supplements, whether it's diet changes, improves significantly better. Like it works incredibly well. And we've seen a lot of patients that, I mean, even adults that struggle with autoimmune concerns and they start getting adjusted and they're like, whoa, my flare ups aren't as frequent. Or like I'm in more remissionary periods than I'm in like relapse periods of my MS or this or that or whatever it is. And so I think that we often see that foundational piece is so critical in order to get those changes for any practice member that's in our office.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many doctors and functional medicine doctors, like, they will just prescribe a lot
My
of the
mic is falling
medications.
down. Oh,
But just things to, like you said, like, manage the symptoms as they are, where they're not, like, going
mhm.
back to that root, and then kids who don't get addressed with these conditions, and then they are now adults in that situation, and then they come to us, and we show them their scans, and their scans are just lit up, and their body can't adapt to those changes, and so they're struggling with work and life and maybe their parents that now have kids that they have to
Yeah.
worry about, and they just don't have the time, and so I think just getting in and that time to make those changes might take a little bit longer as an adult just because we are working through those inflammatory things that they were dealing with as children, and now that they're this old and are struggling, and but we still see massive changes with
Yeah.
those patients that we have.
Yeah,
Do
you're
you
both
think
hitting on it because we talk in the practice with families all the time. It's sequence. Everything that you guys are talking about, that's not us saying that all of those therapies and all those interventions don't have a role and a place. It's just saying that for all of them to be their best, you got to get them in the right order. And
Mhm.
always tell parents the same thing you just said. It sounds so self-serving to say that we should be first in line, but we work on the foundational part to then be able to build off of and create all the other changes that you
yeah.
want. So if everyone's looking at it from the collective of, well, how do we get this person to a place of wellness fastest? It starts with that foundational brick. It just has to. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Do either of you want to touch on how, like, a child might come to us with autoimmune concerns? Like, what starts that? What catapults that? I know we talk about it every episode, but, like,
The perfect
the perfect
storm.
storm. Exactly. Do you wanna
Sure.
Sure.
I it starts in the womb, and so it's mom, growing the baby and developing the baby and any stress on her, and then delivery is a very traumatic process, and so if there's any, interventions or, um, medications or anything during that process, if mom has to have a C-section because that is sometimes the only option, and then it leads into baby having colic or reflux or things like that, and then it grows into ADHD
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of those things, and they just keep building, which is just more stress and inflammation in the body, and so with the immune system not working on top of all of those other things, and lots of pediatricians will say they'll grow out of it or anything like that, but then they grow into just more stuff, and
Yeah. It just
yeah,
changes its shape of what kind of dysfunction that child's dealing with.
yeah.
And so, um, I mean, this is probably our 9th episode on the perfect storm. Like it's something we talk about heavily. Like we had a mom that was in the office yesterday who brought her almost 2-month-old in for a new patient appointment. It might have been Wednesday actually, but regardless, she came in and, baby had she thought she had a really seamless pregnancy, a really smooth transition. And, upon talking to her further, like she had cancer before her pregnancy and she had like this slew of things that were affecting her body. And so then when she comes to find out that like you created like the same egg that's in you creates this baby, helps this baby. It's all the stressors you've gone through is the stress that that baby goes through. And that no matter how wonderful or beautiful or perfect your pregnancy is, there's still stressors to consider. And like you said, birth is traumatic. And I mean, I'm getting off topic a little bit, but like just the idea that I always think about if this baby didn't come to us at 2 months old now, we still have work to do. But if he didn't come to us at 2 months old, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I know what it looks like, but I can't imagine what that mom's going through in the next 3 to 5 years of what life looks like. Yes, he might not be colicky or struggling to go poop, which is the reason mom came in, but then he has ear infections and then he has asthma and then he has allergies and then he has ADHD and then he's depressed and then it's this ricochet like cascade of
Cascade,
events.
maybe?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I was gonna say we talk about the cascade of events, but I think the biggest thing, like even there's a blog post that we're gonna have going out in the future that has an article that talks about when kids have even one round of antibiotics before the age of 2, they're more susceptible to having allergies, asthma, you name it, like a slew of things that could be wrong with their immune response because that's something the body, like certainly if we have an infection, we may need antibiotics, but we want to try to support the body the best we can. And if that means getting adjusted so the immune system does its work so that an infection doesn't wreak havoc on the nervous system and on that child, why wouldn't we do that? Like
I heard
it
it
seems
put
so counterintuitive.
I heard it put so good in another nervous system related podcast the other day. And it was these kids, whether it be autoimmune, whether it be any developmental stuff at all, their nervous system, without parents usually knowing it, has been pushed into a place of stress where it doesn't want to fall behind. So it just starts skipping steps to try and keep pace with where they are
Mhm.
supposed to be. And it
Yeah.
just disregards steps along the line. So when it comes to the autoimmune kids, we are confident that a step of a normal, natural immune response has probably been just skipped and the body moves on
Yeah.
and the symptoms starts to show up because that inefficiency is now present in
Yeah.
the future. So it's why it's so important that we work backwards in time. It's not just where they are now, it's where did they originate from? How far back in that storm did they actually start? And then how do we draw them back out of that to a place of harmony and just simple guided health for them? It's
Yeah.
too complicated with kids.
Cool. I think we've touched on a lot of stuff, so I feel like
That was a heavy
this
one.
might be
Yeah.
our longest episode. I'd have to check, but I feel like this is a pretty in-depth episode. If you are in the Livonia or Metro Detroit area in Michigan, we'd be happy to help you. If you have concerns for yourself or your child, we would love to get you in. And if you tell us, hey, we heard you on a podcast, like we'll fangirl over it for a minute because honestly, that'd be really cool if someone heard us on the podcast. But we certainly want to help. We would love to get you in for scans. If you are not from the Metro Detroit area and you're interested in finding an office that does stuff like what we do, I would look up the PX Docs website. They have a directory and you can look up your zip code and see what offices are close by, but they would run the same scans. They would talk the same talk. We all have been trained to do this exact thing. And so um, feel free to, ask questions, let us know what you want to hear more of. But we will see you on episode 10.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.